I was a bit distracted. Are you saying that, like, we can want things from our feelings and that's how our life can be directed, instead of thinking that we should be doing this or wanting that, or, like, I mean, we just feel it and...
Not quite. Let me just put a bit of a different slant to it, okay? So it's not just like living your life through your feelings. What I'm saying is that what happens is that we often live our life through an intellectualized process, right? And we don't kind of integrate body, mind and soul, so to speak.
So when it's integrated, it comes from different places?
When it's integrated, it actually comes from here. It's really interesting. It comes from here, not here. That's what I was talking about, right? And that's what we were trying to distinguish. Is this coming from an integrated, right? Is this coming from integrated place,
and if it's
or from an intellectual place?
Yeah.
Intellectual is like, but it's always got fears or doubts or pressures, or this is what my parents want, or this is what my family wants. It's always got all this stuff with it, right?
A lot of buts.
Yeah, a lot of buts. Yeah. Well, when it comes from here, from an integrated you.
So if it's not integrated, let it go and just go back to your feelings, sort of thing, and go back to your body.
Go back, do a process of integration. And generally the first step of integration is just to experience whatever is happening. Just allow yourself to experience whatever is happening in the moment. And don't categorize it, don't say it's good or it's bad or helpful or unhelpful, you know, or spiritual or not spiritual. You know, it doesn't matter what it is, right? It's just a process. It's not the end result, right? There's all this kind of pressure about how we should behave and how we should think, right? And we need to let that go, right? To get to a spiritual place, right? Like, having pressures of how to think and how to behave is good when you're at work. Because you have a role to fulfill. Or it's good with raising a family, because you have a role to fulfill, right? But we're talking about a spiritual journey, right? And that's when you should let everything go. And just be present to whatever the experience is bringing for you. Right? I think a lot of us try and be spiritual by fighting our way to it, right? Or intellectualizing our way to it. And that's going to be problematic in the long run. Right? It's much better to just stop and say, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready to go the next step. To honor yourself. To hear the little voice in you saying, ah. Do you know what I'm saying? Really hear it. If there's panic, or if there's fear, or if there's doubt, you got to go there. You don't like just, no, we don't have time for this. We've got to be spiritual. You know? Yeah. It doesn't work. And if you feel yourself fighting your way to practice, you know, that's a good sign. Like if there's this fight going on about meditating or something, you know, or whatever, maybe it's better you just sit with the fact that you don't want to meditate. What's happening in that moment for you. I'm frustrated with this meditation thing. I hate it. Right? And just let it be, however it comes. Right? Because I know what you're going to do. You go, I'm frustrated by this process, and then you hear yourself say, I hate it, and you go, ooh, that's not right.
I don't even hear that.
Yeah, exactly. So you just put a restriction in, you see. Right?
I guess sometimes you just think it's just passing. It's just passing hate. It'll go away. So I'm not going to buy into it. You know?
Yeah.
So that's how you kind of shut it off.
Yes.
Yeah. Put a lid on it.
Yes, and you've got to think to yourself, sometimes that's useful, and sometimes it's not.
Like if it kept coming up.
If it keeps coming up, that's a good sign. Something needs to be heard. You know? Yeah. Because something's being tapped into about you as a person, right? Some part of you needs integrating. That's why it keeps coming up. It's screaming, remember me? The hurt little kid, you know, needs your attention, right? And then, you know, you do your adult thing and you go, shh, you know, the hand, like telling kids to shut up, you know? And then that's not good. So, yeah. You won't even notice yourself doing these things unless you've kind of really integrated, right? You won't notice the ways that, you know, you dismiss yourself, right? Or you deprive yourself, right? Or you criticize yourself. You won't notice these things because you haven't integrated them. They are a voice out here, right, bossing you around, and you're not listening to what that experience is producing in you. Does that make sense? I'm not saying listen. I didn't say listen to the voice, did I? Good. I said listen to how you feel about it. How is that making you feel when you hear that critical parent kind of thing, you know? Right? Or how is that experience for you when you feel the terrified child in you know? So it's interesting. It's such a kind of it seems to be a very unspiritual thing to do. This process of integration, but it's absolutely necessary. You'll have to do it sooner or later. So you might as well start now. fortunately for me, being a social worker, someone who's trained in therapy, I was always open to this process, you know, in myself. So it's always come easy for me. I've never felt resistance, for instance, but a lot of people may feel resistance, you know, about doing this process. But the one thing you'll notice about spiritual people, real spiritual people, is that they're not afraid to look inside. Right? You know? It's for a reason. It's because you just cannot surrender to something higher if you haven't surrendered to yourself, right? It's as simple as that. You know? I wrote here, I said, sometimes we get dealt these situations in our life where we're just fully just stopped in our tracks. You know, like for instance, if someone dies, you know, we have no other choice but to stop, right? And we are forced to experience things in a very deep and strong way. You know, there's these times in our life when this happens, right? And they're the times when you can find the most spirituality, right? So I don't know, you know, if that's something that you've experienced yourself, you know, when you've gone through a very deep crisis and you've been stopped in your track. You've got nowhere to go, you have to face this, whatever it is, you know, and what you have to draw upon in yourself to do that, right? And so that's why there are people who kind of really thrive on that process, you could say, or really, how do you say, have a strength to them in that process, and then there are people who just completely fall apart, right? And generally the people who completely fall apart are people who just haven't done enough integration. So crisis is good in one way. Tells you where you're at. You know, how do you deal with crisis and what happens for you in a crisis, and yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah.